Hi, everybody. Yesterday, there was a city council meeting and they were voting on whether or not to accept the petition that we put together for Realize Las Cruces. In February, the city council had passed Realize Las Cruces, and this was a comprehensive change to the zoning of the whole city. And what we were petitioning was for them to put this on the ballot so that the people of the city could vote on it, because it was going to make some really significant changes, including having potential impacts on existing neighborhoods, such as allowing high-density apartments and some types of businesses in neighborhoods. Over the last few months, we had dozens of volunteers who were working on this petition and trying to get enough signatures so that we could get it on the ballot. So the city clerk took the position that we didn't have enough valid signatures for our petition.
So the grand total of valid signatures was 2,547, which was less than the 3,240 required.
Now, I had asked the mayor in advance for some extra time to present to council on this. I thought that was a really reasonable request. I have seen, for instance, in the past when there are appeals for zoning decisions and things like that, that the council will allow both sides to present with no time limits. So I asked him to give me a few minutes to explain the petition because it's been a really complicated process over the last couple months, and he said no. And so I pushed back and said that I really do need the time. I hadn't heard from him by the time that we got to the meeting. So you will see what happens with that. He's basically going to limit me to 3 minutes, which was not nearly enough time. I had a couple people who were willing to donate their time to me. He would not allow that either. And he also shortened the amount of time that people were allowed to speak. So I had some people who would potentially try to finish my comment for me, and they didn't have enough time to do so. So I'm going to finish my comment so that you can hear the whole thing and hear what I had intended to present to council before they voted on it.
Mayor, as discussed by email, I need 7 minutes in order to adequately explain the petition to council before you vote. I will wait while you reset the timer.
No, we'll give you the 3 minutes like I had informed you.
Okay, so both Beth and Patsy are prepared to donate their time to me
No,
today.
we're not relinquishing any minutes or substituting. By charter, I can give up to 2 minutes. I'm allowing you 3.
City Council and Mayor, I'm Sarah Smith. What you are voting on today is whether the city will uphold the people's fundamental right to petition government as enshrined in our state and federal constitutions. I'm here today to present to you the petition to put Realize Las Cruces, the ordinance which you recently enacted, on the ballot in the next election. The petition was signed by 4,671 Las Cruces residents. From the beginning, the city has made the petition process as difficult as possible. We were not allowed to collect signatures electronically. We were not allowed to use an electronic copy of the 400-page ordinance. So instead, all volunteers were required to carry bulky printed copies of the ordinance, which was over 30,000 pages to be printed at a cost of over $1,000. We were required to collect 3,240 signatures. We collected over 4,600, yet about 1,200 of those signatures have now been thrown out without due process. Let me explain. The city charter gives a 30-day deadline for the initial round of signature collection. The city burned up a week of this time because it took 4 days for me to receive the petition from the clerk, and then there was another 3-day delay because the city attorneys provided false information about who was allowed to collect signatures. I was not able to train volunteers until I knew who was allowed to collect signatures. Attorney Becker finally acknowledged the error and said in an email to me that I should, quote, "please pardon the error for which the city attorney's office bears responsibility." In fairness, I requested that we be given that week of time back for collecting signatures, but the city attorneys refused, even though the city was at complete fault for delaying the petition and giving false information simply because it did not know its own process. Nearly 800 of the signatures that are being thrown out were collected during that extra week that we should have been given in the first place. With regards to at least 400 other signatures that are being thrown out without due process, we tried to follow your rules, but the city would not give clear instructions. The city charter allows for an amendment process so that additional signatures may be submitted. The charter does not specify that signature collection must cease once the first batch of petitions is turned in. Furthermore, the instructions provided to me by the city clerk did not specify that we were not allowed to continue collecting signatures. For clarity, we asked the city attorneys, but they refused to answer this question even though they knew we were continuing to collect signatures. Instead, they let us continue to collect signatures, only later to throw them out because of a reinterpretation of the charter. So we collected another 400 signatures during that time, which the city clerk has now thrown out based solely on the dates those signatures were collected. Of the remaining 3,400 signatures, the city clerk has chosen to unjustly validate hundreds of signatures of registered voters. For instance, some people had a hard time writing due to being elderly or having shaky hands. In those instances, they signed the petition, and then the volunteers filled in their address and printed name. All of these were thrown out, as it has been decided that people who have palsy are not allowed to sign a petition. In some instances, it was assumed that handwriting was that of a volunteer instead of the petition signer, when there was no evidence of that. Again, those signatures were thrown out. Beth is going to continue my comment.
Okay, so I basically got cut off at that point. A couple people did try to finish my comment for me, but because of the way that the mayor had shortened the amount of time for everybody else, they weren't able to finish my comment either. So I'm going to go ahead and just read the rest of it to you right now. The clerk also threw out many signatures when people signed with their nickname, even though the petition did not clearly state that the name had to match the voter registration exactly. For example, she threw out signatures when people wrote Tim instead of Timothy, Bill instead of William, even Gilbert instead of Gilberto. In each case, the voter could still clearly be identified in the voter roll by the remaining information provided, but the clerk still invalidated those signatures and disenfranchised those voters. It is not clear why many of the other signatures were disqualified either, and no information from the city clerk's office was provided about why they were disqualified. We have challenged some determinations that we were able to receive minimal information about, and later received notice from the clerk that many other signatures were also removed in error. She has validated some of those after being challenged, and some she still hasn't responded about. Overall, we're talking about over 1,500 people who are clearly listed on the voter rolls, yet the clerk has invalidated their signatures. They would be allowed to vote at the polls, yet their signatures were not counted as valid on the petition. These determinations are arbitrary and capricious, and the council should overturn the clerk's decision, issue clear instructions for validation of signatures, and require a recertification including all of the signatures I have discussed today. If the city officials had known their own process, it's quite possible we could have met the signature goal in the city's eyes. But because it deployed a process that was unknown to both its staff and the public, we have now landed in different places with regard to which signatures should be counted. Overall, the city staff have not been able to provide basic information about the petition process, have been unduly burdensome on petitioners, and have not been consistent with constitutional due process principles by unreasonably restricting the signatures that were validated. Despite each of the roadblocks, we still collected well over the required number of signatures from residents of Las Cruces through tireless effort by volunteers who sacrificed their time, their finances, their weekends, their family time, and more in order to collect enough signatures. The city's actions to constantly change the rules on us during the process amounts to the city having not acted in good faith to uphold our right to petition. I understand that it has been over a decade since the last referendum petition, so this was a new process for the clerk and the attorneys. However, they provided me with unclear instructions, false information, and a continually moving target. Even your own lawyers did not know what the correct process was, so they gave us bad advice and refused to answer questions that could have helped correct the situation. Right now, it looks like nothing we did was ever going to be good enough. This is an abuse of discretion and violates our civil rights, but this council still has a chance to do the right thing and further instruct the clerk, consistent with principles of due process and open access to government. You have the opportunity to correct this now by overturning the clerk's decision, reinstating the hundreds of signatures of registered voters who couldn't write well or use their nickname, and asking the clerk to give due process to the 1,200 signatures which were thrown out based solely on dates. This will allow the petition process to be completed fairly and in good faith on behalf of the over 4,600 people who signed it. So that's the rest of the comment that I was planning to give at City Council. Only part of that was able to be read by a couple other people there. And I wanted to make sure that you guys hear all the context of what's going on. Now, there were a lot of other comments from the public at the meeting, and then it went to the City Council comments. And I think it's really important for you to hear the way that the city councilors are talking about this issue, talking about the petition process, because they are saying a lot of things that aren't true. And they are also being very interesting in the way that they are choosing to talk about this particular issue, especially given that the mayor has made it very clear people are not allowed to make personal comments or anything that sounds like an attack against any of the councilors or city staff during public comments.
And again, I just want to stick to the regulations, the law, the city charter that we have followed. It's not the personnel, it's not the staff. Thank you.
but pay attention and see what the city council did instead.
And I'm just not surprised by the kind of narrative that you are trying to create now regarding the lack of integrity. When the petitioners, when you lied, you broke the rules, you didn't carry the petition around with you, you manipulated people, and you exploited people's worst fears about their neighbors. And so for you to come here and talk about the integrity of the clerk's process is wild. And I know now you are trying to frame it as if we didn't do our due diligence. That is not true. That is inherently a lie. What Realize will do is help create a greater diversity of housing that we so desperately need. And if you are against that and you sign this petition because you are inherently against multifamily housing and a diverse of housing going up in good neighborhoods with good parks, then I would ask you to reflect on where your segregationist tendencies come from.
Councilor Bencomo's comments about me were obviously slanderous, and she was making false statements. I wasn't given any opportunity to try to correct any of that.
Then I can highlight. But I can attest to the number of folks who were calling me and saying, someone came to my door and told me things that I know aren't true. They menaced me by suggesting that my neighborhood would become devalued and with potentially diverse people. I know folks were put off by much of what they heard at the door. And so I just want to sort of give another gratitude to Mayor Pro Tem for really talking about what's at stake here. And I do want to just sort of say, I think it's fascinating that folks are demanding direct democracy on a 400-page zoning reform. And there's something else at stake. There are things that we make decisions about that we are trusted to make decisions about as city council, and we're expected to do the homework, and we're expected to get public participation, and we're expected to have integrity of our words and our actions and our money. And sending everything to the vote would be, I have no doubt that Realize would pass easily if we did send it to a vote, but that's not how we do things. We have a job to do, and it is making policy, deciding the budget, and making Realize happen today. So I call the question.
So I just want, do I want a gas station built across the street from my house? Well, probably not. But that's not going to happen. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like Chicken Little saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And guess what? The sky isn't falling. And I think there's been a lot of fear-mongering, which is generated, please forgive me, but because I am a woman and because I am a minority and I went to a segregated school in the first grade in El Paso, Texas, I can see one when I see, I can call one when I see one. And I think a lot of you have there's something about, you don't want to be too close to people who aren't like me. Who aren't going to be able to, who may socialize with my children, or, heaven forbid, it's like the boogeyman. So, and that is my perspective, and that's what I have received from a lot of you, and all of you who came up without, different levels, displayed a lot of dislike for your fellow person, and I'll bet a lot of you are fear-mongering, church attending, or whatever, But no, seriously, you might be, but a lot of you, thank you. But that's how you come across. You're a bunch of Chicken Littles. So for all of you who have bashed her, for all of you who have bashed the system, go and beat your heads against the sky. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, so now the other comment that I want you to hear is Bill Matisse. And remember, he is the only counselor who actually voted against Realize Las Cruces. And that's because he asked during the meeting if the city staff could let him know whether or not it was possible that Realize was going to allow businesses and apartments in neighborhoods.
You're talking about a walkable cafe right next to your home, right next door.
Mayor, Councilor Matisse. So again, you have to understand that there's going to be restrictions that probably would not allow that to happen. I don't think the lot size.
Okay, no, and that's where I can't vote yes on this, because you're talking about probably. We probably will not let that happen. But it could happen.
Mayor, Councilor Matisse. Sure.
You know, and I just have a lot of faith in you, my staff, everyone that worked on this. I realize you worked on it for 2 years. But I believe we could do better. I mean, I believe we could actually maybe have the neighborhood allow a petition. You know, just like all of you could petition to have me recalled. In other words, if we don't make the right decision, anybody could start a petition. Well, you could maybe allow a petition of those neighbors like you do for a speed bump. Because I remember I needed a speed bump in my neighborhood, and I needed to go get, I think it was 75% of the neighbors had to comply to get that speed bump built. Maybe you could put that into the law so that the neighbors have a say if they want that cafe next to Molly's house or Jennifer's house.
So here's what he had to say yesterday.
I just want to say thank you to the petitioners. I know it was hard work. And I have always been of an elected official that would like the people to vote on it. I did it with gross receipts tax. I did it with the spaceport when I was mayor. And this decision, this change is so significant, this code change, that it's not just something that we should vote on. It should have been given to the voter. Because what we have here is two diverse populations. We have people that have homes in the older districts, and we have those that are in the new development. And that was an offer. They offered that maybe we could do the new development codes on the new developments and leave the older districts alone. And then we had a young man that came up, and I really appreciated his comments about tweaking it and amending it. We have a period that we can do that. But right now we have 4,700 voters that were not happy with the decision we made. And of course, we worked on it for 4 years, and we had, again, stakeholders come out. And I remember someone saying that was about 700 or 800 people that contributed. We had mailers go out, and a lot of the public knew that this was coming. But it's still evident, it still happened. And that's what I'm concerned with, is that we had over 4,500 people that didn't know about it. And that affects them. My position is it should have gone to the voter, like the city of El Paso. The people are very important, and your voice is important to me. And that's why I stand with my decisions. Thank you.
I want to thank Councilor Matisse because he is listening to the people, and he agrees that when you have over 4,000 people who have signed a petition, we have the right to vote on this. You know, we well exceeded the number of signatures that we should have had. The city clerk at this point should have been directed to go ahead and finish validating all the signatures. We don't really know where she was going to land because over 1,200 of them got thrown out without even being looked at. There were a lot of other signatures that we know she had invalidated during the first round of signature collection that we still had questions about, and we haven't been able to get those questions answered. Okay, so here's the actual vote.
Okay, we're ready for a vote. Go ahead, Teresa.
This is on a motion to approve resolution number 25-142. Councilor McClure.
No.
Councilor Matisse.
Yes.
Councilor Graham.
No.
Councilor Curran.
No.
Councilor Flores.
No.
Councilor Bencomo.
No.
Mayor.
No.
Thank you.
You can see that just as in the very first vote for Realize Las Cruces, Councilor Matisse is the only one who voted in favor of the people and the concerns of the people. Now, this decision that they made, according to the city charter, is final. We cannot appeal the vote of yesterday. So they have now officially, per the city's process, thrown out our petition and said that it's not valid. I hope that this is a wake-up call for the people of Las Cruces to really understand what's happening at the council. It looks like at this point, they were bound and determined to have Realize Las Cruces, whether we wanted it or not. And we went through this months-long process, tireless effort of many volunteers out there in dust storms. And they basically just said, nope, we're going to find a way to make sure that your petition is not valid. We're not going to consider things. We're not going to treat you fairly. We are going to do what we want to do. Regardless of how this all turned out, I want to say thank you to all the volunteers, all the people who got involved in this effort and who worked very hard on it. We did do what we were intending to do. The city is not playing fairly. That's where we've landed. We do have 3 city council positions on the ballot this year. I don't know how that's going to go. It could go where Las Cruces ends up in an even worse position. It could end up where we have a council who is maybe more amenable to actually listening to the people. We'll see. I don't know exactly how things are going to pan out, but I also know that as a mother, I am not going to stop trying. I'm not going to stop trying to turn things around in this city, in this state, because our kids deserve better than this.